இலங்கையின் முதற்தர சுற்றுலா தலம் ரீச்சாவின் மாபெரும் உணவு திருவிழா செப்டம்பர் மாதம் 5, 6 மற்றும் 7 தேதிகளில் இன்றைய டிக்கெட்டுகளை பெற்றுக் கொள்ளுங்கள்.
ஆண்டு காலகட்டங்களில் தமிழ் மக்களை தேடி தேடி இழுத்து வீதியிலே கண்டந்துண்டமாக வெட்டி டயர் போட்டு எரித்ததை பார்த்து ரசித்த ஒரு அரசியல் கலாச்சாரம் இங்கே சமூக படுகொலை என்று கூறுகின்ற போது 83ஆம் ஆண்டு வெலிக்கடை படுகொலை எங்களுக்கு தெரியும், ஒவ்வொரு ஆண்டு நினைவு கூறுகின்றோம். ஆனால் நுவரெலியாவில் 56 நோயாளிகள் படுகொலை செய்யப்படுகின்றனர். அதே போன்று நோயாளர்களை பார்க்க வந்தவர்கள் கொலை செய்யப்படுகின்றார்கள். அந்த நோயாளர்களை பார்க்க வந்தவர்கள் பயத்தினாலே தப்பி ஓடி அவர்கள் காடுகள் நுழைந்த போது குளிரினாலே கொல்லப்பட்டிருக்கின்றார்கள், பட்டினியினால் கொல்லப்பட்டிருக்கின்றார்கள். இந்த சமூக படுகொலை என்பது இந்த நாட்டினுடைய கலாச்சாரமாக இருந்திருக்கின்றது. ஆயிரத்தி 1983ஆம் ஆண்டு அதன் உச்சக்கட்டத்தை தொட்டதை நாங்கள் அறிவோம். அது 2009ஆம் ஆண்டிலே அதி உச்சத்தை தொட்டது என்பதுதான் உண்மை. 2009ஆம் ஆண்டு அதி உச்சத்தை தொட்டது. 1983ஆம் ஆண்டு காலகட்டங்களில் தமிழ் மக்களை தேடி தேடி இழுத்து வீதியிலே கண்டந்துண்டமாக வெட்டி டயர் போட்டு எரித்ததை பார்த்து ரசித்த ஒரு அரசியல் கலாச்சாரம் இங்கே இருக்கின்றது. විශේෂයෙන් 1983 දෙමළ ජනතාව සොයමින් ගෙවල් වලට ගොස් මරා දැම්ම විතරක් නෙමෙයි, පාරට ඇද දමා කපා කොට මරා ඒ සිනාසුණු දේශපාලනයක් අපිට තිබෙනවා. 1983ஆம் ஆண்டு சமூக படுகொலை என்கின்ற போது எங்களுக்கு வெலிக்கடை ஞாபகம் வருகின்றது. அந்த வெலிக்கடை தொடர்பிலே தொடர்ச்சியாக ஒவ்வொரு ஆண்டும் நாங்கள் நினைவுகூரல் செய்கின்றோம். சமூக ஆத்தனை පිළිබඳව අපි කතා කරද්දී 1983 වෙලිකඩ ඒ ඝාතනය අපි දන්නවා. නමුත් නුවරඑළියේ ඉස්පිරිතාලේ රෝහල්ගත වී සිටියා වූ රෝගීන් 56 දෙනෙක් ඝාතනය කරලා තිබෙනවා. ඒ වගේම ඒ රෝගීන්ව බලන්න ආපු ඥාතින් ඝාතනය වුණා. ඒ විතරක් නෙමෙයි, ඒ ඥාතින් මේ සිද්ධින් වලට බියෙන් කැලෑට පැන්නා. ඒ රාත්‍රියේදී සීතල නිසා සහ ආහාර නොමැතිකම නිසා ඔවුන් මැරුණා. මේ පිළිබඳව වාර්තාව කොහෙවත් නැහැ. මේ පිළිබඳව වාර්තා කොහෙවත් නැහැ. අර 56 දෙනා ගැන කියන්න සිද්ධ වෙන්නේ ඒ 56 දෙනා පිළිබඳව වාර්තාව තිබෙනවා ඉස්පිරිතාලේ. ඒ නිසා අනිත් ඝාතන පිළිබඳව කොහෙවත් වාර්තාවට නැහැ. ඒ නිසා මේ සමූහ ඝාතනය කියන කාරණාව දීර්ඝ ඉතිහාසයක් එක්ක තමයි මේ ගමන් කරන්නේ. சமூக படுகொலை என்று கூறுகின்ற போது 83ஆம் ஆண்டு வெலிக்கடை படுகொலை எங்களுக்கு தெரியும், ஒவ்வொரு ஆண்டு நினைவு கூறுகின்றோம். ஆனால் நுவரெலியாவில் 56 நோயாளிகள் படுகொலை செய்யப்படுகின்றார்கள். அதே போன்று நோயாளர்களை பார்க்க வந்தவர்கள் கொலை செய்யப்படுகின்றார்கள். அந்த நோயாளர்களை பார்க்க வந்தவர்கள் பயத்தினாலே தப்பி ஓடி அவர்கள் காடுகள் நுழைந்த போது குளிரினாலே கொல்லப்பட்டிருக்கின்றார்கள், பட்டினியினால் கொல்லப்பட்டிருக்கின்றார்கள். இந்த சமூக படுகொலை என்பது இந்த நாட்டினுடைய கலாச்சாரமாக இருந்திருக்கின்றது. யுத்த காலகட்டத்தில் கிழக்கிலே அம்பாறை வீரமுனை கிராமம் முற்றாக அழிக்கப்பட்டதை தெரியும். இராணுவம் அதே போன்று ஊர்காவல் படையினர் ஒன்று சேர்ந்து வீரமுனை கிராமத்தை முற்றாக அழிக்கின்றார்கள். அதே போன்று கொக்கட்டிச்சோலை படுகொலை நமக்கு தெரியும். யுத்த கால பரிச்சේදී අම්පාරේ වීරමුණේ ගම්මානව ඒ ගම්මානේ ජනයා සමුළු ඝාතනය කරනු ලබනවා. ඒ වගේම කොක්කටිචෝලේ පිළිබඳව අපි දන්නවා. ඒ විතරක් නෙමෙයි සෙන්චෝලේ පිළිබඳවත් අපි දන්නවා කොහොමද ඒ ඝාතනය සිදු වුණේ කියලා. ඒ විතරක් නෙමෙයි අපි දන්නවා සෙන්ට් පීටර්ස් දේවස්ථානයේට බෝම්බ හැලුණු එක මේ සිදු වුණේ චන්ද්‍රිකාවේ කාලේ. චන්ද්‍රිකා කාලේ සිදු වුණේ. එතන මේ සිදුවීම් සියල්ල ඒ සමූහ ඝාතනයට අයත් එකක්. නමුත් අද දිනේදී අපි කතා කරන්න උත්සාහ දරන්නේ ඒ සමූහ ඝාතනය සමග සමූහ මිනිවල පිළිබඳව කතා කරන්න යනවා. මේ ඉතිහාසය පුරා සමූහ ඝාතන ඒ වගේම සමූහ ඝාතන කරමින් මිනිවලක දමා තිබෙනවා. ඒ පිළිබඳව සොයමින් විශේෂ වාර්තා ඉදිරිපත් කරපු නීතිඥ රත්නවේල් මහත්මයා අප සමග සිටිනවා. ඒ පිළිබඳව කතා කරන්නට චමනි පිළිබඳව වර්තමාන පිළිබඳව කතා කරන්නට. ඒ වගේම චමනි සහ යුද්ධය හේතු කොටගෙන සිදු වුණා වූ අසාධාරණ දේශපාලන අයිතීන් වෙනුවෙන් පෙනී සිටින නීතිඥ කාණ්ඩීවන් අප සමග සිටිනවා. දේශපාලනිකව මෙය තෝරාගන්නේ කෙසේද? විශේෂයෙන් මේ මොහොත වෙනකොට ප්‍රධාන චූදිතා වූ මරණ දඬුවම ලබා සිටින සෝමරත්න රාජපක්ෂ දැන් අපි දන්න විදිහට ලියුම් දෙකක් එකක් ජනාධිපතිට සහ අගමැතිට ඒ වගේම නීතිය පිළිබඳව අධිකරණ ඇමතිට ලිපි යොමු කර තිබෙනවා. තවත් ලිපියක් තිබෙනවා. දෙමළ ජනයාට ලියලා තිබෙනවා. මම උතුරු නැගෙනහිර දමිළ ජනයාට යුක්තිය සාධන ඉටිකුණු සඳහා සත්‍ය මම එලි කරනවා කියලා. ඒ එලි කරනවා කියමින් ඕ කියනවා මේ සියල්ල මම කැමති ජාත්‍යන්තර පරීක්ෂණ ඉදිරිපිට මම කරන්න කැමති. නමුත් මම ලංකාව අධිකරණ විශ්වාස කරන්නේ නැහැ. මේ තිබෙන්නව පරීක්ෂණ විශ්වාස කරන්නේ නැහැ කියලා කියනවා. එතකොට මේ සඳහා මේ පිළිබඳව අපි සාකච්ඡා කරන්නටයි මේ මොහොතේදී අපි රැස් සිටින්නේ. ඒ නිසා ඊ타මත්ම ආදරෙන් නීතිඥවරු දෙදෙනාව අපේ යුක්ති දෙසා ජනතා බලය වෙනුවෙන් ඔබ වෙනුවෙන් මා පිළිගන්න අතර ඊළඟට කතාව පැවැත්වීම සඳහා රත්නවේල් නීතිඥ මහත්මයාව හඳුනා දීමට මම ආරාධනා කරනවා සරාජ්‍යවරණ පියතුමාට. ස්තුතියි.
All other religious dignitaries and friends, I am happy to be with you all today on this occasion. Not that I am happy about the subject. Well, Father Shaktivel in the beginning, of course the topic given to me is about Chmani, but Father Shaktivel touched upon the massacre at the Noria hospital, about 56 in number. That's an incident that very few or nobody knows unless they have read it in newspapers at that time. But that incident up to now is shrouded in mystery because it has not been highlighted by the newspapers nor by anybody. Now, to go back to the 1983 saga, the massacre started in Borella, Kanata on the 24th and 25th and spread to other parts of the country. But Noria was, as far as I was concerned, it was quite quiet because there were some police officers who were high-ranking police officers who were managing the place and immediately arrested all bad eggs and criminals. It was quiet until the 29th of July, when a very powerful minister who himself had been elected from Noria, he landed from Colombo to Noria, and he went to the police station and said, how dare you all arrest all my supporters, let them loose. And when all those hoodlums were released, they went and massacred a lot of people, especially the inmates of the hospital. So this is one incident where it has been proved beyond doubt that the political bigwigs had been behind all these massacres. If there was any violation of the law, if there was any serious incidents, killings, extrajudicial killings, it was done with the blessings of the politicians of the time. And no one is an exception. The successive presidents, the government, the ministers. Now coming back to Chmani, as we all know, it is the hot topic now, and it is gaining prominence day by day, because every day there are skeletons, bodies, parts, artifacts being discovered. So was the Mullaitivu Kokutoduai mass grave, like Satosa in Mana. However, there is a stark difference here. In the other mass graves, you get skeletal remains, of course, covered with clothes. There was a semblance of some sort of dignity to the dead, because at least they were spared of the insult of being rid of their clothes. However, in Chmani, the skeletons are bereft of any garments to protect their dignity. So this is one big difference from other mass graves. And this had been confirmed by the recent report submitted by Professor Raj Somadeva to court. And there he mentions that there is an absence of dignified burial. That is short of saying there had been a massacre. And now all of us know that people are clamoring for international investigations. That should have been the norm, because in other countries, especially Latin American countries, Argentina, Chile, Guatemala, there had been mass excavations, because after the military regime had been brought down, the civilian government took over, and there was all these excavations without much controversy, because it was left to the organizations, civil organizations, without the government being involved or interfering. You get international agencies like IFG and various other organizations having expertise in that field. And the excavations took place very quietly in the full view of people. But here it is different. Wherever the bones or the remains are excavated, suspected to be mass graves, immediately the government has to intervene. The court takes over. And that is a necessity which we cannot do without. So, this is done under the supervision of the court. And for us, although we would very much like the international exposure, the international experts coming into the scene, but the government is very reluctant. Anything that says international experts or international organization, it's an anathema to the Sri Lankan government, whatever government that has come to power. So we have to make do with whatever that is available. So if any people who are capable of bringing down international experts, let it be done with the participation of civil organizations, and let the foreign embassies come to the scene. But until then, this has to go on. And there is a dedicated set of officers and experts, including forensic anthropologists and forensic archaeologists. And with them, there is a battalion of people, especially students from Jaffna University, from Kalani University, who had been taking part, and their work is very difficult in a sense. The entire day under the hot sun, under the heat of the Jaffna, that climate, they have to sit down and scrape with whatever the implements, small implements like things. And it's a very hard work. And people from outside can comment. However, the work has to go on. But there are people who want to take advantage, political advantage. So that cannot be discounted. Everybody wants to get involved. But what I could say is that as a person who is a counsel who appears for the affected family, is that the families are very emphatic that this work has to go on independently and without any interference from outside. So there are some rules that only limited time is given to the media, but there's a time frame, and that is being followed. We had instances where some over-enthusiastic YouTubers trying to sort of, by way of artificial intelligence, trying to disfigure something and to present the public with some sort of unnecessary figures, which has to be discouraged because the actual picture has to go to the people. Because people are emotionally sort of attached to this. So the correct picture has to be given. And of course, in recent times, we have actually seen direct and indirect interference by the state. Of course, the minister in charge, that is the Minister of Justice and Law, Mr. Nanekara, he speaks in Parliament, he gives interviews, all right. But unknown to him or without his, I don't know whether with his knowledge or not, there had been attempts to interfere. Now we had a experience where the Secretary Ministry of Justice had tried to give some instruction or direction to one of those experts there who did not want to comply with that. He refused to speak to her. And she had finally tried to speak to the police officers, who also did not much want to comply with her, whatever the instructions. So there has been an attempt to interfere with these proceedings in a way that the government wishes, maybe to go slow on that, or maybe we don't know what the intention is. But the persons who had tried to do that had already been involved in these proceedings. That is, when the first stage of Chmani excavation was done far back in 2001, there was a court hearing and excavation done. And the same person had been there on behalf of the Attorney General's Department. And after a few days of excavation, and after the discovery of about 15 skeletons, the matter was stopped there. And the court wanted some advice, or the police wanted some advice from the Attorney General Department, and the file was sent to the department. And for the last more than 20 years, the request is still idling in the Attorney General's Department. So, the people who have been responsible for this delay, a purposeful delay, deliberate delay, are now in power, now in positions of power. So there is no surprise that they want to stall this like they did when they were in the Attorney General's Department. So we have to circumvent or try to manage with so many matters like this. And one fine day, we might find the magistrate being transferred or promoted. We might find some of the experts being transferred out. So we have to be prepared for a time when we'll have to face very much fierce challenges. Excavations, that is what happened in Chmani in the first stage and the second stage, which is going on now. The earlier stage, I think it was done with some minimum support of an international organization. I think it's Asia Foundation which found got down some experts, and it was on a limited way it was conducted, and the distinction between the two was that in that earlier stage it was completely, especially the peninsula, Jaffna was completely under the army, and independent or some liberal type of investigation could not have been conducted. There was a magistrate who was in charge, but whether the relevant location was excavated, it is in doubt. And thereafter, what happened to the 15 bodies which had been excavated? Where is the remains now at the moment? Even the persons who played a role there in that don't have an answer. And also, if you were looking at the sort of physical distinction, in a sense, the bodies that were, the skeletons that were not with the clothes, and also there were also children. But in this excavation, there is a predominantly, in a sense, there are many, quite number of skeletons that can be attributed to that of children. And of course, the primary difference was that the public did not have much opportunity to take part, not even the civil organizations. And on behalf of the state, the Attorney General's department's officers were there on the ground.
You mean the last time?
The previous time, yeah. That was, I think, Aisha Jinasena, and the other person is a Supreme Court judge now, Yasanta Kodagoda. So those were the people who were there on the ground. Yes, there was at least one, I suppose. But that all that was not highlighted at that time because of the situation there at that time, and there was very little information that was coming from there. So those were the differences. And you asked, there was no foreign intervention, is it? Yes, that was due to the, I think it all depends on the powers that be in the relevant times. I think at that time, Chandrika Bandaranaike, due to international pressure, she had to sort of resort to some, in a limited way at least, some international exposure there. But at present, although there is pressure, the government, the successive governments do not want international exposure. In a sense, even in a limited way, they don't want to permit experts in respective fields. Even though the foreign embassies, entities such as European Union, they are willing to provide their expertise and to bring in foreign experts, including ICRC, the government is adamant that the local experts are sufficient. So that is one reason why, at present, the international that part has not come. Now, Mr. Reverend Lionel Peris asked a question about the International Criminal Court and how it could be taken to those institutions. Now, everybody is talking about the Geneva sessions. Each year, the March and come September, people are getting ready for the Geneva sessions. However, this has been going on for several years. Now, in the present context, the Sri Lankan question may not get that much of exposure. But people forget that other than Geneva, there are other mechanisms available in the UN. ICC is one of them, and there are special chambers, special ad hoc institutions that can be, or investigational bodies that can be open. I think in time to come, we'll have to knock the door on each of these. And the material and the evidence is being gathered, and that has to be put in place. And all this will have to be done through active lobbying. We still have opportunity to do that. So we should not only depend on this Geneva fanfare each year. So there are ways and means, but that has to be sort of pursued in a very active manner. And some part of Mr. Bandara's question I might answer. You asked about the guidelines, there are Minnesota Convention and the Convention on Bournemouth. So those are international covenants which have to be incorporated into our laws and regulations. In fact, we pressed for something like that, and the OMP took it up. But the leadership at that time of the OMP held a conference or held some sittings in order to draft this SOP, Standard Operational Procedures. However, the relevant people were not contacted. I wonder whether Mr. Brito Fernando went for that, was invited. Were you? You weren't. So was I was not invited. My organization was not invited. Only I heard that Sarvodaya had been invited. And some other now, Visaka's organization? Yes, Dharmadasa's organizer invited. And they sat there, they went there for 2 sittings. And we don't know what is the position now, outcome now. We should press for that, yes. Because Chmani is working without a SOP. That is why there are people who are trying to get in without any they are making so much shouting and all that. And there is criticism leveled against the operation. But if this standard operational procedure is in place, then nobody can point a finger at the procedures. I think Mr. Bandara's suggestion is very good. And we have been actually lobbying for that. And in fact, the present chairman of OMP is very much favorable to that. But even though the chairperson of the OMP is willing to do that, there is pressure on him not to do that. In fact, there is pressure on the OMP chairman to resign. He is under such pressure. Not only him, but there are other important officials who are also asked to leave, giving them some other positions in some other area. So these are the matters that are going on. So I think I have somewhat responded to those questions. Thank you.
The first question posed to me is by you, that is regarding this OMP. Though I have certain reservations about the OMP, so OMP doesn't have, as in the way it is set up, the inquiry procedure as to the civil liability or criminal liability, so that OMP doesn't have any jurisdiction over that aspect. And apart from that, I find this OMP as only, instead of issuing a death certificate, now they are issuing a certificate of absence. So this is not the one that the affected community is expecting from the state. Though it is called as an independent office, we say it is not. So that is my personal view about this OMP. So, and I can just mention a particular incident where a Trincomalee Iyer's family, Iyer is, you know, the one who is with the Pusari. In Tamil, you call this as Pusari. Pusari's son was missing. And then later they found that he was taken by the army. And then that subsequently that army man was punished through the High Court indictment. And in the meantime, the father, that this the person who was abducted and subsequently killed by the military, that was the finding of the High Court. Then this father, since the deceased person is the sole breadwinner of that family, so then the father went to post to pillar and he couldn't find any relief. Finally, he ended up with Human Rights Council. So they are the government, state party. So this OMP is supposed to look after the reparation, this transitional justice, the 4 pillars of the transitional justice, right? So here, this Sarma, the Jagadishwara Sarma versus the state. So then the state went before the Human Rights Council for defending the state, took up the position that, right, there is a case pending before the High Court. So with that finding, so we will try to give him, in case if the findings are that the army personnel is, in charge is connected to this disappearance. So then we will consider paying him compensation. So then they agreed before the Human Rights Council to have the quantum of compensation in accordance with Sri Lankan system, right? That is to apply those international norms into the calculating the compensation. So then, so they said that we will go before our local Human Rights Commission and will decide about the quantum of compensation. Then they transferred that case through the Foreign Minister's Secretary and then to the Human Rights Commissioner. That time the chairperson was Radhika Kumaraswamy. All 5 members sat and quantified the damages as 3 million. Even then the government didn't pay. So we filed a case in the Court of Appeal, making the Treasury Secretary as one of the respondents, the Foreign Secretary, and then the Attorney General. And the Jagadishwara Sarma is the petitioner, the father of the deceased, or the person who was killed. And then Court of Appeal dismissed that application, our writ application. So our application was a writ application asking the Treasury to pay our compensation, because now the local body has quantified the damage. So then state took up the position that now that Singarada's case is there, it's binding on us, and now we are not supposed to pay this compensation. So agreeing before the International Council that they will pay him in terms of the local compensation method, complying with international setup. So agony, mental agony, that and this. The calculation is there, giving all these international sort of norms are there for each and every thing. They have quantified the amount and then calculate the total amount was some 2.9 or 3 million. So now the case is still pending. So in such a scenario, this OMP, of course, has to go into, so many changes in terms of these international sort of approaches are there as to how these missing persons are being dealt with in other forums, right? So with that, I will conclude that, and then I will come to, so this gentleman, the comrade raised a pertinent question. So I will address on that, or else if since he is not there, then Brito Mahatma avva me Jatyantar